Episode 19 of Every Semicolon. It's been a little while since I've done one of these, longer than I would have thought, between episode 18 and 19, but I have had some other things to do recently and it sort of held me up, so this will be there probably won't be another one for another few days after this, but I expect that soon I'll get into the time where I'll be doing these quite frequently. So this episode, as you can tell by that folder name there, is where I'm going to add the first version of the Catapult. Now the Catapult, I'm going to drag the textures in to that folder. The Catapult is pretty awesome, and while I'm at it I might just, at least for now, crank up those resolution of those textures. Catapult's cool because it's a different concept again in terms of style. So drag in the FBX. So where at the moment the ballista seems like a fairly standard ballista in terms of like reality, you know, it's still kind of cool and stylized and chunky, and but it's made of wood, it's made of metal, and the dwarves that will go with it will be fairly sort of standard looking dwarves. The cannons got the more steampunk sort of aesthetic, and will have cool steam elements coming out and things like that, and it's got these little gauges in there, a bit more advanced. So these are the steampunk dwarves who have got more advanced technology. And let's start over here with the Catapult. The Catapult is quite different from both of those, as you can see there, and in a moment when I throw it in, just change the scale factor, and I'll add in the two animations for it, which Shane's detailed here: shoot and load. 1 through 17 for shoot and 17 through 30 for load. So those are the frames of those animations. Now shoot animation and a load animation are both going to be not looping, so we'll just set them straight to once. Apply that. Alright, we'll just chuck it into our scene to have a look at it. So, as you can tell, it's made of bone. So these dwarves are going to be a different type of dwarf, and also quickly get rid of these while I'm at it. We'll clean this up in the next export, I guess, but these couple of bones here have renderers on them, were exported with renderers, so we'll just turn them off. So the dwarves that will handle this Catapult are like, don't know if I have an exact sort of terminology for them yet, but I guess you could sort of say like voodoo sort of dwarves are going to be a bit more on the strange side. They're going to be probably more magic-y than other ones, and the idea for, I guess, for this Catapult is not to throw like a big stone or boulder or whatever like the trebuchet will. The trebuchet is going to be throwing the big massive thing, doing the most damage. The Catapult, to do something different than the others, is going to throw multiple objects. So I imagine at the moment what it'll be is a bunch of skulls and rocks and just whatever smaller objects in like some sort of bag. So maybe like a rope bag. So it's just sitting there and you can see all the stuff inside it, and it throws it with the shoot animation. It's the animation window here. So it'll throw it like that, and out will come a bunch of skulls and different little small objects to do a sort of cluster of damage on the fortress. So I think that's going to be pretty awesome, pretty different, and just adds another element to the gameplay that makes this a different thing to use, and visually it's just pretty sweet. I think we're going to do some cool effects for this one, so this will give us an opportunity to do more particle effects and add different colours. Obviously the voodoo dwarves will have like beaded beard braids and things like that, and have all sorts of crazy costumes and accessories and things like that. And also we're thinking maybe that the grass on the rock platform might be dead around the catapult and all their props and things. So maybe we can come up with a cool way of doing that. Just write a shader to blend between the green grass and the dead grass based on maybe where the guys walk and stuff like that. So that could be a cool one for another video. And yeah, and then like maybe particle effects pouring off some of the different mystical props and things. Maybe they've got some sort of staff or something that exudes some sort of particles, and I reckon the skulls and stuff could be sort of mystical skulls and possibly do some sort of additional cool effects and damage or something when they hit, and they could be like pouring off sort of green tendrils and green like purple or something tendrils, some nice different sort of colours in there, smoke, like weird mystical energy sort of pouring off it. So I think that'll be pretty awesome. So here we're finally getting to see a bit more of the style of the game. Before, up until now, it had been more we started with the more standard elements because that's the thing to do, and we seen that sort of colour palette there of the ballista and the green and the fortress, and it all looked fairly typical. But now we're starting to see a bit more of what the game's going to bring in terms of originality and style, and how it's going to affect the gameplay as well. It's going to be really cool. So let's have a quick look at it. We have this arm here from some sort of giant creature, and it's also cool because it tells a bit of a story about the world at large outside of the game. In this game we're dwarves and there's leprechauns and we're up in some floating sky island, so it's obviously not some typical real world. It's a fantasy world, so just having some sort of stuff in here that alludes to a larger fantasy world, I guess below on the surface, is pretty cool. So this bunch of bones from some sort of giant creatures that these voodoo dwarves have scavenged or killed to get this equipment to build their siege weapons, and all these sorts of what look like sort of vines or something. I assume is what Shane was sort of building there, or some sort of fabric to tie all these together and twist it up. It looks like to pull this down, and so on release it will unravel and fling that up. So that's pretty awesome. I really like what he's done here with that. So we'll get that going this video. I think I'll get the catapult shooting some sort of cluster of just temporary objects for now. There's a few things to consider with this that might be a little bit strange. So we've got to make it rotate still, and this one, there's no real good way for a object like that to rotate on the spot, and the same was true for the ballista. The cannon, we're going to handle it with the cool gear sort of mechanism, but I think for the most part it doesn't really matter. The ballista, we could possibly add some sort of wheels to it. It's not really that important. I think when you rotate left and right, it's going to be from this angle. It's not really important if it's makes sense how it's being rotated. I don't feel in this context. So I might make the wheels rotate, but even again, you're going to be rotating from this angle. You're not even going to see that, so you probably won't even bother doing that. And the trebuchet, I think, is going to be the largest, and we haven't really talked about it yet, or Shane hasn't started looking into making it, as far as I know. So we might look into doing something where the trebuchet is built as part of the island, or something like that, because it's going to be so massive that I think it should occupy sort of the entire space of the island from front to back, or something, or we nailed down into it, or something like that. Alright, so yeah, the main thing for this video is going to be just building this catapult up and making it shoot a cluster of things. So we're going to do similar to what we did with the cannon, and just create a prefab and start bringing across all the settings we've built into the components, just sort of filling them out for the catapult. to make it work. So we're going to build the prefab in this spot. Let's go to this fortress. Okay, we've got the ballista there. I'm going to leave him there just for reference, and I'm going to go to his prefab. We've got a catapult prefab there, but let's delete that one because that's old. Copy the, which one would be easier to copy? So there were a couple of differences between the ballista and the cannon from memory. The ballista allowed for tilting and the cannon didn't. I think that's the main thing, the main difference. So I'll copy the cannon just to have that already good to go. Okay. Alright, that's cool. Alright, it was actually power that the ballista allowed for changing, not tilting. So, for the catapult, perhaps we can again do some sort of variable power. So I might look at what I did for the ballista, which let me just double check. Shoot and reload. I set it to a certain position and shoot, and then played from there. So, alright, so that'll work quite well for the catapult as well. I think the if we go to the shoot animation, so 17 was the last frame. So 1 through 17. It's not exactly the. We need to find sort of the, say, from 0 there. Alright, so that's quite simple. 1, 2, 3, 4 frames. Within those 4 frames, it goes from the weakest power. Well, actually, we'll set the weakest power to something, like that. So it'll be like 2 frames. That'll be the weakest power. That'll be the strongest. The same thing as we did with the ballista back in an earlier video. If you want to know exactly what I'm talking about. But we'll get into that a little bit later in the episode when we get to that point. Shouldn't take too long, I don't imagine, this stuff. So, catapult. Let's do this. Drop the catapult into platform 2. Gonna rotate him. Shift him over here. Alright. What we want to do is remove the out of graphics. We've got pivot, we've got cannon. I think we'll keep that as is. Pivot was at the back so that the cannon could tilt up and down, and that's just a temporary thing. Tilting up and down. We're still going to have that with the catapult, but it will be doing the animation stuff. So where the ballista's animation for shooting was interpolated between some points for power, we'll be doing that for the tilt for the catapult. So that might require some new code, but I can just probably copy and paste the stuff out of the power animation lerping. So not going to be any need for a pivot for tilting, perhaps for moving left and right. So I'll leave the pivot in there, and I'll delete that cannon out. Grab this guy, chuck him down inside the pivot. I'll reset that, and I'll just reset that again, put it back on the island, and rotate it around Y 270. Alright, so the catapult, so there, the pivot is in a weird position, so we'll reset the pivot, and that seems good. And I imagine when we rotate it around for top aiming, I don't really mind which way it's from where it pivots. I guess ideally it would be from the point where the shot is fired from, so that the force, the distance the thing travelled, remains sort of consistent relative to its forward direction. But That's pretty relevant too, really. Okay, so there is our new prefab. Just collapse all of that. I took the list in there. Okay, now we're going to start moving around some of our references in the weapon script. So cannonball is the current bullet prefab. We'll just leave that as is for the moment. So we've got bullet creation point, which is there. We're going to need to move it to where the arm ends up at the end of the chute. So for now we'll just put it here, and we can just tweak that a bit later on. Okay, what's next? X angle. So that's for the tilting. So the X angle range is going to be, we'll just make it not like, won't make it 0 and 0 for the moment. We'll just make it small, and we'll just see if it handles nothing. Shoot power range, we'll take that from the ballista for the moment, 50 and 80, so we'll just do that. Okay, it's probably not enough. So shot force of 1. We probably want this stuff to go upwards because the arm, the trajectory of the arm moves upwards. We're going to want the trajectory of the bullet to initially be up. So I don't know if my bullet creation point handles that. It does not. Where this ballista one does. So what's the difference? Must be the X angle. Okay, so back to our catapult. I'll remove that rotation. And so on the catapult, we need to give it some sort of X angle. Something that seems accurate based on the movement of the bone arm. Let me just quickly check where that arm ends up. So it should release when it hits there. So from this perspective, I'll just use that cloud as a frame of reference. So just right there on that cloud is where I should see that bullet creation point. So just put it there. Alright, so with that in mind, let's set our X angle to what looks right. Okay, I think that's fine. Obviously the power is a bit too extreme, so we'll bring that down. Okay, so that might be alright. We'll set that to 45 and 30 maybe. What's 30 look like? Okay, we'll leave that for the moment. 30 to 45, x-axis angle, make it 30 degrees, and we'll set the range from 29.95 to 30.05. Alright, so that's cool. Let's do the next step. Got the pivots for the tilt, that's fine. Tilt rotation, min tilt, max tilt. We don't want any tilt. So again, just because I'm not sure if my system code handles it at the moment, I'll just slap in a small number. Alright. In fact, I don't know if I need any weapon tilt points. I'll have a look at that in a sec. First thing I just wanted to do is just get it running. So animation component, shoot and reload. I think it's just called load on this one. Animation shoot min power time. So this is the stuff right here. Animation shoot min power time, max power time, animation power min power time. Right. Like those names. Animation shoot min power time, power. Let's have a look at what those actually do. Okay, animation shoot and animation power. Okay, so power is not in fact power. Let's have a look at this. So the shoot animation. So shoot animation gets called blah blah. We enable it. Set normalized time to shoot min power time. Okay, we're setting it to where it should be based on shot force. Makes sense. But what about the other one? Animation power min power time. Set power animation. Same thing. So on the blister, oops, shoot and reload. So for the blister I'm using reload to determine the shot force stuff, so I don't want to do that at all for the catapult, and it would be shoot if I did, but it's what is the power, isn't it? Right, it is the power, not the angle, so same as the blister. Okay, so we'll use shoot, and these will be the same numbers for both. So it's a normalized time. So what we say from 0 to 2. So 0 and 0, and 2 divided by 17. So we'll just we'll copy 117647. Right. So that is the normalized time. Normalized time being, again, I've talked about this before, but 0 to 1 range. 1 being the end of the animation, 0 being the start. This is it's a 17 frame animation. 2 frames of that is 0.117647, etc. Normalized time into it, so that's sort of the percentage, I guess, into it, so it's 11.76% into the animation. Alright, so that will work. Side anim graphics, we need to, is that even used anymore? Okay, let's see what sort of errors we get. Delete that, apply that to the prefab for the moment, and let's have a look. Right, a level needs references to all the weapons, just in the order of which you want to access them. Okay, so for set power animation, it's giving us some grief. Let's have a look at our catapult. It'll play automatically turned off. Shoot, it's all lowercase, so I think that's the difference. Alright, so we've put that on the moving platform, and you can see a bug there immediately. While the weapon and the platform move, the trajectory the trajectory indicator is not moving. So why is that? It's parented to the platform, for one. Platform 2. But I guess what is moving is not that. Oh no, it is moving. So, alright, it's parented to that, and that's moving. But these guys don't move with it. So T position, blah, transfer, so get position at time. Full instantiation point, top position, graphics transform forward. Okay, our reference node is gone, and it gets set to what? Full instantiation point. Right, so it's been parented to nothing because I didn't set any thing to parent to, so I'll just parent it to pivot. Okay, apply that to the catapult. Let's have a look. Alright, so that's more like it. Alright, so from the side on we've got our little thingamajigger. It lets us move up and down at the moment, not inwards. So let's change that. So that was the what we had for the cannon. I think I made a mistake in copying the cannon, not the ballista. I was mixing up the angle stuff with the power stuff. So I've got all that written somewhere here. Min, side aim, angle, distance, blah blah blah. Alright, so distance, we'll set that to whatever the ballista had. So it had 5 and 40, so let's do that. Catapult, let's do it on now, straight in the prefab here. 5 and 40, and the angle is not going to change. So let's just leave that, let's just put it to 110. Give that a go. Whoa, doesn't like that. Again, probably poor coding on my part, not accounting for the possibility of those angles being the same. Same with the power in the one of the previous videos, but anyway, not a huge loss. And that seems to be the wrong direction. So our maximum power is the 11% part of the normalize into the animation, and the minimum power is 0. So those are around the wrong way. What about when we shoot? Okay, when we shoot, it looked fine except for the fact that the animation didn't play, and I think that's because, yeah, I'll look at that in a second in the code, but I'm pretty sure I know why that is. Alright, so as you can see, min and max I then ran the wrong way, absolutely. And that. Okay, so our weapon, when we say shoot animation, so if the animation component is not null and animation shoot is not equal to 0 or nothing, and animation component blah blah, so animation component exists, I've put in a name for animation shoot, and that animation state is not null. In that case I want to set it to enabled, normalize time, no, distraction. Alright, so where were we? Okay, so for some reason the animation didn't seem to play. We'll have another look at that. So for now, at least the setting these, that should be fine. So weaker, stronger, so strong. Let's have a look. So one thing you can do in Unity that a lot of people don't know about for debugging is, and I think I've probably brought this up before, but in the inspector you can change from normal to debug, and what's good about that in animation debugging is that gives you animation to the ability to look at the animation states. So I can look at all the relevant properties of an animation state. So here's shoot, and we can see that its speed is set to 0. So that is the problem. You see, it's enabled, so it's playing, and its weight is 1, so it has full influence over the relevant bones. But the problem is that the speed is 0. Synced speed. I don't know what synced speed is. I don't know if I've seen that before. I'll look it up, because that's what I do. Still doesn't look like it's in the scripting reference. So let's see if we can see anything about it in the code from metadata. Nope. I don't think it's anything that they give you access to, but they show it in the debug window, so that's interesting. Anyway, the shoot animation sets speed to 1, so it should work. But it isn't. So what's happening? We go start coroutine. Well, here we go. It's another thing. So we need to do one of these ones. If animation shoot is not equal to animation power, that, and wait for shoot animation. Let me set up animation states, which does all that. Cool. Alright, so that should work. Notice. Look at that. Missed. Okay, so shooting a cannonball at the moment, not very exciting. So just quickly, what happened here was that in this case, differently to the ballista, the shoot animation and the animation power are the same animation. So the and I could actually probably use the load animation. That might even make more sense. But whatever. The so what was happening was for the ballista, I was disabling the power animation, setting its weight to 0 when I played the shoot. But in this case, since they're both the same animation, which I'm checking for here, and if they're both the same, or if they're not the same, then I do the stuff. If they are the same, then I do nothing with the animation power, because that's this one up here, and I want it to be what it is. Alright, so that was pretty cool. Let's have another look. We should be able to rotate him, which looks fine. Come down here, just change the power, shoot. So he's throwing a cannonball at the moment, which is not obviously what we want, and not a whole lot of force behind it. So I think we need to add a this cluster sort of a weapon, or cluster bullet, I guess, in the vernacular of our prefabs here, that maybe does some extra damage as well when it hits, or maybe I won't put that in now probably, but something to think about in the future, adding some sort of like explosive effect when they hit, or yeah, who knows, we'll come up with something cool. So we'll chuck in, just duplicate cannonball and call it Catapult cluster. Drop him here, and as you can see, he doesn't exist. What's that all about? Okay. I've no idea how that happened. Luckily, I've had well, I haven't actually had that pulled on me, but if you ever work in an office with people using Unity, as I have, if you want to be a real asshole, just go over to their machine when they're not around and just turn off a layer from the scene view's visibility. So that's what this layer list here does. It gives you the option of turning off a layer for rendering. So if you don't want to look at platforms, don't look at platforms. So one thing that is evil really is you could turn off the default layer. Is one that will immediately catch their attention, and it's probably the most fun. It's the least sort of I guess if you do another one, if you do like a layer that they're not going to notice as much, it could actually cause problems. It could legitimately slow things down, and they could spend a lot of time not knowing what's going on. But if you turn off the default layer, everything's the majority of things are probably on your default layer most of the time. So turn that off, they won't be able to see anything except for maybe a few random objects that aren't in the default layer, and they'll just be like, what the hell is going on? If they don't know about this, which is not a very common thing to know about, then hilarity ensues. So I've done that to a couple of people because that's the kind of guy I am, and so I needed to check that when the bullets weren't showing up, but I have no idea why that was. If it was in a previous video, then I don't remember it. Alright, so for the cluster, I'm not sure exactly what I want to do. I think the easiest thing will be just put them all in some sort of configuration, some sort of, to make a bunch of small little objects here, put them all near each other, and give them all different weights. So the thing to think about would be sort of whether I want to have it spread, or if I want them to just all go in the same direction, just separated and with different forces and things. The alternative being, instead of going all straight, some of them go off on different angles to a certain extent. So those sort of decisions, I think I'll leave that until later on in development, where I'm looking more at balance and come up with what the actual real properties of each weapon need to be in terms of the gameplay. So for now, let's just get something in there happening. It's hard to remember sometimes that this game is coming along pretty quick, and I guess in a lot of ways what I'm about to say is only somewhat true. That if you add up all the YouTube videos, which is all the time that I've spent on this, it's less than 40 hours at this point. So that's less than 1 week of regular sort of 9 to 5 work, and at this point it really should be, it's still sort of a prototype phase, or if I was developing this as a real job at a company, I would expect this to still be in a prototyping sort of phase, and not at the level it is now. And because of this, it's often hard to remember that things don't need to be built to a final spec right now. They don't need to be built to the final. I mean, if I want to make this catapult shoot things out in weird angles, I should do that later on. For now, it should just be getting things working, and worry about that sort of thing later on. And the problem is that it has actually been in real time many months. I've just been infrequently doing these videos. It was only added up to 34 hours or something at the moment, or some 35. I don't know, something like that. What I'm actually going to think of doing is at 40 hours doing a separate video where I do a short video that shows just key points of the progress up to this point. And it might be a quick way for people to, in the future, because I imagine this will go for multiple 40-hour stretches of time. Hopefully not too many 40 hours. I mean, I think it's gone pretty well so far, and I think that before too long we'll have broken the back of this thing. The weapons will all be designed, built and functioning, and then you'll have all the main gameplay elements built probably in the next 10 to 20 hours, and then it'll just be level design and menu systems and polish and building for different input systems and platforms, and that's a significant amount of time as well, no doubt. But I don't think it'll take. I'm thinking maybe 120 hours might be somewhere towards the end, which is a pretty awesome. That's really good if you think about it. That's 3 weeks of regular time to build what is actually a fairly substantial game. So, and I'm standing here just looking at nothing, talking about it for most of the time too. So, hey, it's gone pretty quick. But the other point is that I was, as I sort of alluded to before, it's not really entirely true that it's only been 35 hours, because Shane has been working on these models for possibly longer than that, maybe not, but different time to that. It's not been this synchronous development between the two of us, and not that that matters. I mean, theoretically, if he'd put in 35 hours up to this point, then asynchronously, then still in a typical synchronous environment, it'd be 30 hours in total, so 35 hours. But I'm not sure exactly how many hours he's put into it at this point. But the only thing I can track at the moment with these videos is my time, so that's what I'll primarily be referring to. So, okay, what I want to do is chuck some stuff in here. Now, I would like to put in a prefab within prefab, but Unity doesn't support that. So if I was to build a bunch of different anyway, like different skulls and different things like that, and then just go, I want to spawn blah. Actually, maybe I should do that. Maybe I should actually build Okay, let's see what the weapon does. So I'm just thinking at the moment, and I will speak about what I'm thinking about shortly. Right. Okay, so what I'm doing at the moment is I instantiate the bullet, I find its rigid body, and then I give the rigid body a velocity. And then I follow the rigid bullet and blah blah blah. But this is the part I'm care about here. So perhaps what I should do instead is get the bullet script and get the bullet script and have a method on it that I call setting the velocity of the bullet, and that way I can make a custom bullet for the catapult that has a whole bunch of other prefabs or rigid bodies underneath it. And what I'm thinking of doing actually is having catapult bullets, having a whole bunch of different prefabs, and having one sort of catapult cluster prefab which instantiates X amount of those bullets, and this will make it easier for me to do that variance in angle. It can then instantiate as many as I want randomly from the folder within an area, and apply a force to them with some sort of randomized variation on the angle if I want to do that. That seems like the go. So let's do that. So we'll just grab that code there, pull it out, and we'll go bullet dot set velocity. Now we'll actually call it bullet shoot, because I don't want to actually set velocity. I want to do something specific in the shooting situation. So we'll call it shoot, and undo that for a sec. Or let's paste that. And I want that's the direction and that's the power, so I'll pass those in separately. Well, I don't know if I ever want any variance on the power. Either way, it's still one vector, so I can just do what I want. Alright, I'm going to pass them in separately. Okay. So our bullet needs a method called shoot. Let's chuck it down the bottom here after the inherited methods up there. Public void shoot needs a vector3 shoot direction and float shoot force. Alright. So that's all good for the standard ones. It's going to be direction times shot force, so that's the vector normalized in this situation, multiplied by the force. So for those who don't know much about sort of vector math and that sort of thing, it's probably the easiest to understand of any sort of 3D maths in terms of, you know, matrices and especially quaternions. Let's use this as an example. So a vector is just, it's basically a point in space sort of offset from an origin. So in this case you've got this sphere's local space where these axis markers extend from is sort of 0, 0, 0 in its space. So in the three directions x, y and z, that's 0 in all of them. So the y, what is, yeah, if you were in the Unity scripting language, whether it's C# or Unity scripts or whatever, the vector3 dot up refers to the vector 0, 1, 0, which is 1 in the y and 0 in the x and z. So 0 in the x is here, 0 in the z is here, 1 in the y is 1 up in this direction. So to and then forward is refers to z and right refers to x, and then obviously you have negatives as well. So negative y and negative x and negative z. So when we have a vector saying, you know, for example, if our shoot direction was forward for this sphere, then the vector would be 0, 0, 1. So 0 in the x, 0 in the y, 1 in the z. So say it was sort of at the tip of that z axis marker there, so that was 1 meter forward, 1 unit. That's the vector, and we want to multiply that by 2, so it becomes 0, 0, 2, so it becomes twice as long. And with that you can determine, you know, with the length of a vector you can determine things like, you know, in the case of our rigid bodies, you know, they have a velocity vector, which basically gives you a direction and a, well, in that case, a velocity in that direction, which is the length of the vector. So a unit vector, just to finish this up, there's a lot more to talk about obviously if I wanted to, but a unit vector is a vector that is 1 unit long. So This sphere is actually a good example. If I had a unit vector that was just in the z direction, then it would be 0, 0, 1, 0, 0, x, 0, 0 for in the x, and 0, 1, 0 for the y. Those are all unit vectors. But say it was, say I had a vector that was 0, so nothing in the x, but it was 1, 1. So it would actually be up here, sort of it would actually form a square with this z and this y. Well, at least from this orthographic perspective, it would be a square. So it would be here, being 1 in both directions, so 1 up here plus 1 over here, and that's how vector addition works. If you have 0, 1, 0 plus 0, 0, 1, then you can think of it like adding on this amount here, this direction here, to this one. So, and the same thing works for subtracting. And anyway, that is not a unit vector. A unit vector is actually here, which is on the edge of this sort of sphere. At least when those touch, like that. So on the edge of this sphere here is actually a unit vector. That's the distance between that point and 0. It needs to be 1. If you add on 1 in the z and 1 on the y, you get this point up here. That distance from that point to the center is not 1. The actual numbers would be 0.707 something for both of those directions. Anyway, sorry to talk about that for a moment. That was a bit random. A lot more to learn there. So if you're interested in development programming in 3D or 2D, you really can't get away, I don't think, without knowing at least vector math to some extent, because the amount of stuff even that I've done in this project so far, you need to know a bit about how it works. And it's not difficult, and you can pick up a lot of it up as you go. So don't fret if you're not into maths and that sort of thing. It's not like matrix maths. And matrix stuff isn't that difficult either, really, I guess. But anyway, we're going to stop talking about that for the moment, so I can get on to the next part of this episode. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to copy the Catapult again, chuck him in here. Then I'm just going to call it Skull 1. I'll make another one called Skull 2, Skull 3. Delete those because that was a mistake. What I want to do first is just drag that into the scene and just change its size a bit. Change the material it's using. Okay, and I'll just go dark grey. So let's make temporary sort of bone 1. We'll make that. We'll chuck that material on here for 1, and then we'll make it a bit of a lighter, maybe a bit yellowy, if it will let me. Yeah, so that's a bone-like colour there, I reckon. So we'll just make 3 different bone colours. Similar, but it's different enough to be visible to us when we're testing out a randomization. Make a bit more of a maybe more brownish. Okay. There's bone 1, 2, and 3, and here is skull 1. So we'll apply that, and actually we'll delete. Okay, we can leave bullet script on there. Actually, that's all fine. We'll select that prefab, find it here in the project window, duplicate that a couple of times, and just delete that. Alright, so back to our cluster guy. We're going to delete all that. And what we want is the bullet. We're going to duplicate it. We're going to call it skull bullet. Right. Cluster bullet. Yeah, that'll do. So cluster bullet is going to inherit from bullet. And we're going to remove all of this. And yeah. We're going to remove all of that. So all we want for cluster bullet is for it to do something different when shoot happens. And what that is instantiate one of our prefabs, a whole bunch of our prefabs. So cluster bullet prefabs, make an array for those. Number of cluster bullets 10. Now I could make that a random range, but I don't think I ever want to do that because I don't want it to be random. That's not fair, you know. There's maybe going to be randomization to some extent, possibly in the and even this I don't know if I'll do in the way they scatter. If I do that, you know, it might be inevitable in some ways, but it won't be by much. But I don't want to make it random in how many it shoots because that's just unfair. You know, if you want to, you know, it should be down to your skill and your, you know, and how much you've learned about the level and figuring it out. It shouldn't be up to luck. That's, you know, not to that sort of extent. That's not where I can help it. Okay. Yes, that's good. So what we're going to do is spawn a bunch of these guys. And when it's done spawning them, I want it to destroy this game object. No I don't. Ooh, it's gonna be interesting. Interesting. I need to now think about this a little bit better. Let's chuck in a late update. Okay, one of my thoughts there is actually to do with the camera following this stuff. I need it to follow the cluster. So what I might do is keep track of all the things that I've spawned and set the position of the cluster bullet to the average of all those positions. So I need to actually store all those that I make. Created bullets. I'll just create that in the on enable. There we go. I need to do it there, do I? Set this to null for the moment, and okay, getting a little bit ahead of myself there, but okay, back to what I was actually doing. Alright, so we're going to go this equals new game object number of that. So we're setting up the array at this point to be the number to hold the number of bullets we're going to be spawning. So we're going to run through from 0 to the 1 less than that number. So that number of times through this loop, and we're going to create this new game object. So let's go back to our bullet here and bullet to the weapon and instantiate the dude. Nope. Again, no. Alright. Yeah. So instantiated bullet equals instantiate blah 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 blah. So what we want is this guy. Random whoop, no. Random dot range. As I've talked about before, when it's a int, it's exclusive. So I can use that dot length, exclusive for the max. When it's a float, it's inclusive, oddly enough. That makes sense. So that will find a random number between 0 and the number of 1 less than the number of bullets in the prefab. Oh, sorry, in the array, and then I'll grab the prefab out of the array at that number, that index, and I'll instantiate it at a position yet to be determined. Nope. So bullet, no, bullet doesn't have a this transform does, but it needs to be protected. Okay. Yep. Alright. We're gonna make the rotation random. I know that much. Random rotation. Cool. Okay. Let us do a random position. So I need some variables to determine the extents of that. How about just for now just a random sphere, so float random max random radius, so 3 meters maybe, a bit big, 2 meters, not sure how big that hand is, but we can tweak it later. That's the whole point of the public variables. And we'll add to our position random dot sphere times max random radius. Alright, so this is going to grab a vector inside a unit sphere. So actually just what I was talking about before with that sphere. The vector is going to be somewhere inside that, so it's picking a point inside sort of that -1, well, units, yeah. Yeah, so it's going to pick a point and we're going to multiply that by our radius. So what's going to happen here is let's have a look. At the size of the bag this will be holding. Left holding the bag. Okay, that looks good. And it's possible we'll have variations on ammo for this as well. I'm not, you know, again, the there might even be a thing where you have a couple of different ammo types here and you get to pick which one you use or something. You have like, you know, a certain amount of one, a certain type of the other, and amount of the other, and you can do that sort of thing. So 4.5 meters So my 2 meters wasn't too bad. We'll stick with 2 meters for now and see how it looks. And that's all good. It creates it. Create a bullet. That. And get rid of that. Alright. Happy with that. And then for each of these, we're going to add up all their positions. And get the average. So I'm going to include an int here to tell me how many I've added, because what's going to happen is, as some of them go beneath the destruction height, they'll become null. So I'll need to do a null check in here. Equal to null. Continue. Otherwise, add its position let's see this for a moment. To our total position, add number of added. So then I want to do if number added is equal to 0. So if all the bullets have been destroyed, then this will get destroyed. Else this transform dot position equals, and well, I'm going to just do this to get component. Might instead of storing the game objects, I'll store the bullet components, and in the bullet component I'll just change this to public. I have no issue with doing that. I'll just hide it in the inspector. Because I don't ever want to see that inspector, I don't want to set it manually, and yeah, that's all good. So now instead of this, it's going to be this, and I can use this optimization using the cache transform. And we want to do total position divided by number added to get the average. Good times bullet. Alright. Instantiate that position, rotation. Instantiate takes. Yep. What's it saying? Vector 3 is not contained in definition for position. Yeah, that's totally correct. Alright. What's that? This window, assignment never used. Fair enough. Catapult. Alright, so that's all well and good, but I haven't actually set anything up yet. So, catapult cluster. Instead of bullet, We want cluster bullet. And we want 3 prefabs. These guys. Let's lock that inspector. Grab these guys, chuck them into the array. Does that, of course. Possibly. 1, 2, 3. Alright. And we'll doesn't need a rigid body, remove that. Cluster bullet. Now, because he's inheriting from bullet, does that mean he still has the same required scripts? Yes. Yes, he does. Oh, well, I'll turn off gravity and we'll make it kinematic. How's that? Okay. Apply that, governor. And our catapult prefab needs some dis. Okie dokie. Look at that. Problem is, for one, they all look like the same. Dude. I don't know why that is, because I didn't actually change the materials on them. I'm going to guess they're different though. 1, 2, 3. Yep, look at that. 3 ones. No, it wasn't quite. 3, 3, 3. And I guess there is 10, but as close as it could be considering the number. Being the same amount. Smash! That's awesome. They got a bit of force behind them. They're pretty heavy at the moment. Dense little skulls, these things. That works quite well. Let's do that again. I think the camera might be a bit too far away, is my only concern at the moment. I really think the camera needs to be right up in their grill. Yeah, I said right up in their grill. Whatever. Okay. So I think it's a bullet thing. Tracking distance Z -25. So is that in the Z axis? Oh, Z negatives. Yeah. Okay, I get it. Let's make it -15. Give that a go. Yeah, you see that jittering going on there. That's as the camera follows. So, the first thing I'll do is just do something with these skulls while I remember it. And change their materials and whatnot. Skull 2 can get bone 2. Said bone 2, not boned 2, by the way. Skull 3. Okay. Oh, and also, where were they? I'm going to change their. Nah, whatever. Okay. The last thing I want to do before I end this one is that camera jittering. Boom. So in comes the camera, there's our different skulls, shaky shaky, camera stops, powered down. Alright, so the camera shakiness, what's going on? These guys are moving as part of what will be a rigid, I should probably still let rigid body. Anyway, the physics will be moving those guys along, and that's all well and good. And then in late update, I'm setting the cluster bullet, but the camera itself is also being set in late update, is it not? It's not that one. Ain't that one, it's this one. Late update. Yes. So, what might be happening there is that the camera gets moved before the object. So, let us chuck the camera manager into here and apply that. See if that makes any difference. Smooth as. So what was going on there was that I was using late update to set the position of the camera, and also late update to set the position of the bullet to the average. So what that means basically is that I have no way of knowing which one will run first. Unity runs them in some order, based on something to do with maybe their position in the hierarchy, and then on the components on an object, their position. Now let's sit here for a shot. Their position within the component list. So I think they actually run from the bottom to top, something like that. So developer console run, then game manager, then camera manager. Yeah, so I don't know which one's going to run first. So what I have to use is what they added in 3.4, I think, which is the script execution order. So that allows me to set what order the objects or the components run in. So it'll still run all the updates and then all the late updates, but and other various things it does and whatever timings. But now I can determine, I can say the camera manager always runs after anything in the default time, which is all the scripts that are not set outside default time, or before anything beyond 300. So this is the sort of number here. So default time will be 0, and then it doesn't mean 100 meter or 100 increments, but you could 1, 2, 3 would probably be the same thing as well. It's just sort of an order, and you also do before default time. So that's pretty cool. It's pretty handy. I can now have the camera manager always running at the end, which is probably what I should have done at the start, but I just didn't think of it until the issue popped up. And that's a common issue as well in a lot of development in games. You see, where the update order of things is wrong. I see that quite a lot in Unity stuff. People seem to make that mistake quite a lot of having their camera move or update at the wrong time. And sometimes it can be tricky. Sometimes it's not as easy as just that. Sometimes you have more complicated things going on, influencing what the camera's doing. A lot of smooth follow scripts not smooth at all, and a lot of people will switch to just parenting the camera to the object they want it to follow, which is fine, but it's also limiting, and that's often I see that often due to frustration with trying to get non-jittery camera movement. So it depends. There's always a solution, but sometimes the solution is harder to come by. This time it was quite easy, and it is the most common problem, which is an update order. Anyway, that's probably going to do it for this episode. The skulls, obviously at this point, they're bullet wise, but destruction wise they're not right, but I don't want to work on those too much more until I have art assets and I put the particles in, and also just have everything else in there. I don't want to mess around tweaking variables too much until everything's there. We have one more weapon to get in, and at that point I can really start thinking about how they all play with each other. You know, how they all, I don't know, that sounds a bit weird, but how they all you know, get along and complement each other. Obviously, there's going to be levels where there's only one of these weapons, or two of them, or three of them. And sure, I mean, I could theoretically design around, you know, without one of them for the moment. But I really feel like it's worth waiting until I have all four of them, and because I don't want to give one attributes that another one should have. You know, if I don't have the trebuchet there to work with, I might, you know, compensate by, you know, for not having it by giving one of these other weapons abilities, or, you know, some sort of attributes that it shouldn't have once all the weapon types are there. So 4 weapon types is going to be, I think that's right for this game. I picture this mostly on iPad these days, but definitely will release it on PC as well, and Mac and Linux, I guess. Thanks to, you know, 4 Unity 4, which has been announced between last episode and this episode. Yeah, it sounds it sounds pretty good. I'm excited. You know, the advanced surface shaders package that I have. Yeah, I think it's going to be. There's a lot of things I want to do with DirectX 11. Look into sort of mainly compute shaders and things like that. I want to try and add new things that way. But yeah, Unity 4 sounds pretty good. There's a bit of, you know, people weren't too keen on the upgrade price, and I wasn't that keen on the upgrade price, to be honest, as well. But they've seen the error in their ways, apparently, and lowered the price again to a more reasonable 50% for upgrading, and a further 20% of that for upgrading before the end of July. So very much appreciate that, and looking forward to Unity 4, and it'll probably come out, or the beta will come out before this series is concluded, I'd say, for sure. So there'll be surely an episode where I bring it across to Unity 4 and deal with any issues with that. So I'll probably bring it across to the beta as soon as I get the beta. So yeah, okay, that'll do for this episode. Not the best episode, I don't think. I seem to have rambled quite a lot, and I apologise for that. But the bone catapult, I think, is pretty sweet. Let's do a couple little camera moves around it. Dun, 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 dun. Music as well, I think, a big part of this, and sound. And actually, I think that's the next episode. Sound and effects, just perhaps placeholders, but just having something in there will be, I think, pretty significant and important. So I really love the design of this. It's pretty cool. My girlfriend claims that she came up with the idea for the Voodoo Dwarves. I don't remember that happening, but I'll give it to her anyway. So yeah, Voodoo Dwarves, and then the I think the idea for, and also, so I'll just quickly talk about this right now, is what I sort of thought of when I was thinking about these dwarves, and that recently after episode 18 was that each one would be after a certain sort of mineral. It all mined different things, and that's why they'd have different sorts of weapons, and they all come from different cultures and that sort of stuff. So I think the idea with the trebuchet dwarves is that they'll be more metal focused. So coming up with maybe a metal based trebuchet might be a bit strange and difficult, you know, in terms of actual real world physics, but I think it could look pretty sweet. It might be mainly just like a metal plated thing, or it could be entirely metal, and I think there'll be more like full suits of dwarven armor, and they'll be like the warriors and the, you know, sort of arrogant badass dudes, and the voodoo guys are the strange mystic guys, and then you got your regular dwarves who are just, you know, fun dwarf guys, and then you got the cannon guys who are arrogant, you know, like technologist steampunk dudes, and I'm sure we'll get some interesting you know, little cutscene-y things and bits of dialogue the dwarves will say based on what other kind of dwarves are in the level, and also the quantity of other dwarves in the level. So if it's like you know, one lot of voodoo guys, or say one lot of steampunk guys, and then 3 voodoo guys, or something like that, then they'll probably have something different to say about, you know, the overwhelming number of these crazy mystic dwarves. So that'll be pretty cool. I'm looking forward to seeing some really cool humour in this. It's a really nice texturing. It's just alright. Anyway, that'll do for this episode. So episode 19. Thanks for watching. I appreciate if you sat through this episode. I think it might have been a bit painful, to be honest, just from my memory of the stuff I rambled about. So I'll try and be a bit more concise and a bit less rambly in episode 20. That'll do. Thanks a lot.